I've been collecting old Mac hardware for a very long time, and since June 2018, I haven't really done an update video on my collection. Today, I'll be showing you all the new things I've acquired since my last tour video. First system is the 1994 Macintosh Color Classic. I bought this computer on eBay for a reasonable price, as is condition or broken. When I got the computer, it didn't work. However, scrubbing the board, I was able to revive it, and now it works perfectly. The computer itself is in cosmetically very good condition, aside from this large crack that it sustained during shipping. One cool feature that this Color Classic had, that it shared with a lot of its other brothers and sisters of the time, was that it was very easy to remove the logic board. All you had to do was take off the back cover and slide the logic board out. Taking a look at into the About This Macintosh page, you can see that the computer is currently running System Software 7.5. Next up, we'll be taking a look at my 1990 Macintosh Lc. Now originally, I bought this computer boxed on eBay for about $15. It was a pretty good deal, however it was untested, so it was still a pretty big gamble. As my luck is, it was of course broken, but I was able to revive it by recapping the power supply unit. I've also recapped the main logic board, hoping to fix the sound issue, however it hasn't. I'm still troubleshooting it as to this day, but at the moment I can't seem to find the issue to the sound problem. Now, the LCs came in a couple of configurations in the early stages. You could have the one with the hard drive and the floppy drive, or the rare early one, which has two floppy drives. You can actually change these yourself and add just a second floppy drive in the place of the hard drive. And they actually do have a little cover on the front that you could just pop out to put the other floppy drive. But normally, stock dual drive models are rare and sometimes pretty expensive, but in my case, I say that they shouldn't be that rare or expensive, as you could just regularly do that with any stock LC. However, I do want to point out that later models, such as the LC2 and 3, and also the Performer and Quadra series that use this form factor, actually do not support the dual drive configuration. Because the dual drive LC didn't sell so well, Apple just decided that nobody's going to buy a dual drive LC, and they just decided to cut the whole line completely. In combination with the LC, I also have the 12-inch RGB display. Now, this monitor didn't actually come with this particular LC, but it was the monitor intended for the LC, because you can tell because the line on the front matches perfectly, and Apple did intend this monitor to be paired up with the LC and a few other Mac systems from the time. However, in my opinion, it looks the best on the LC because of the proportions, and it just looks really nice. One problem with the monitor is that it's a slightly different color than the LC itself, because this LC was in such good condition and this one was just used normally, I could imagine, so that's why the colors don't match. I'm trying to figure out a way to make the colors match, but so far I've been proven pretty unsuccessful. Looking in the About This Macintosh page, you can see that we're currently running System 7.1. I believe the LC could support up to 7.5, but I've proven unsuccessful of installing it. I also wanted to point out that the LC does support color. However, the only reason why it's on color at the moment is because I don't have a PRAM battery installed. It is the two of my newest iMac G3 DVs. Now, I bought these two computers in a lot on eBay. The Snow was working, but it had a display issue where it wouldn't display anything at all, and the Graphite was fully functional. However, when I received the Graphite, it was completely destroyed in shipping, hence the reason why it is being held together by masking tape. Fortunately, I was able to fix the Snow with a simple board swap, So the graphite is a 400 megahertz and the snow is also a 400 megahertz, even though it was a 500 megahertz originally. The graphite does also have a broken CD drive, so I just removed it entirely. As we can see in the About This computer, the graphite is running macOS 9.2. Meanwhile, the G3 Snow is also running 9.2. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to demonstrate this because I'm having troubles with the operating system or hard drive. Now, one thing I wanted to note is that this is actually using a SATA hard drive with a SATA IDE hard drive interface. Now, it used to have an SSD, but it wasn't working too well, and now I see that this isn't working too well, so I'm thinking about just putting it back with the original hard drive. I also wanted to note that I also replaced the speakers in these things, which is why they sound better than the graphite speakers, which I plan on replacing soon in the future. Next up on the list is my 1989 portrait display and my 1987 Macintosh 2. Now at the moment, these two are probably maybe my favorite accessories and computers that I have in my collection, which is why I've set them up in my room. I didn't buy these together, I bought them separately, and I wanted to make a side note that the portrait display actually uses a really weird display resolution. So if you get the DB15 to 13W3 cable for this display, you're going to have a high resolution video card, otherwise it will not work. And I just got the video card, so now I can use them in combination with each other. The portrait display itself is a really nice monochrome display, and it's the exact same size as an A4 sheet of paper. It's very good for printing and other Word document related things. As for the Mac 2, it's a very large workstation computer, and it's pretty powerful for the time, and it runs software pretty well. And then the keyboard and mouse are pretty unrelated. Taking a look at the specs of the Mac 2, we can see that we are currently running System 7.1, which was the highest I was able to install on this. Next computer we're going to be looking at is the Powerbook Duo 230. Now this particular model was released in 1992 and discontinued in 1994. Now the Powerbook Duo was made to be a small budget, well not really budget, but just small lightweight sub-notebook for people who traveled a lot. And one thing that's really interesting about this laptop is that you can close it, and then when you get home, you could insert it into this dock, turning it into a fully fledged desktop. Now the dock is really interesting because the Duo did lack a lot of really important things on the laptop side of things, but the dock was fully loaded and had everything. It had all the regular ports that a Mac would have. It even had expansion slots, had a floppy drive, even an external speaker, if that's really that interesting. Now, for some reason, my Duo wasn't actually powering on at the moment on the standalone charger. I was able to get it to work with the dock, and here's a picture of that. So unfortunately, I won't be able to demonstrate the Duo's functionality. Since my last tour, I've acquired 3 various Intel Apple laptops. The first is a early 2006 MacBook. This is the white version, and this one I actually used as a school computer for a time, and it held up pretty well until I got a new computer to replace it. Everything seems to be working except for the CD drive, and unfortunately the screws on the side are missing, unrelated to me, which is why they're being held on my tape. And it does work, and it is running macOS 10.6.8. This next laptop is a 2008 MacBook. Now a lot of people confuse this with the MacBook Pro, but this is in fact a MacBook. Apple released this aluminum unibody MacBook for a short period of time before it was replaced with the standard polycarbonate one because it kept confusing people. Now, this computer is pretty good. It's running El Capitan. I haven't really had any problems with it. The battery still holds at least like 2 hours of charge, and the CD drive works and everything works. Pretty good computer, and yeah, moving on. The last computer that we're going to be looking at of the Intel era is this computer. This is a 2011 MacBook Pro, and this computer is actually in pretty rough shape, but it does work. I found this in a trash can near a thrift store, and it was boxed, which is why I took it, and it worked. Except the battery has bulged inside, so I had to take it out, which is why the trackpad is cracked, and I assume why the screen's cracked. But everything works, and even the trackpad and everything clicks well, and even the CD drive works. And you can even see when the thing is closed, it looks a lot like the unibody MacBook below. But you can tell in certain ways that this is, in fact, the Pro. For example, it has the little Pro badge, and if you look at the ports on the side, you can see that the MacBook Pro has an SD card slot, which the regular MacBook does not. Now we are moving to the last device of the new things, which is the Newton MessagePad 120. Now what the Newton basically is, it's just basically one of these 90s PDA tablets made by Apple. Apple had a whole Newton line in the 90s, and it didn't really do so well, which is why a lot of people haven't really heard of them. This one in particular is a earlier model, I believe, and it's in okay condition, except in this area over here. It was chewed by a dog, apparently, but otherwise, pretty good condition. Now, you can't really do too much with a Newton today, but it did have a few interesting things. For example, it mainly had a notepad, which had a spelling correction, grammar check, handwriting recognition, and it worked pretty decently well on later models, but on earlier models it was pretty bad. But you can draw stuff, you can paint stuff, do a lot of different things. Last device we'll be looking at today is the ImageWriter 2. Now, the ImageWriter 2 is a dot matrix printer that Apple made. This is the second printer Apple has made, well, the dot matrix kind. They had an ImageWriter 1 that came out with early Apple II systems and early Mac systems, but the ImageWriter 2 is what replaced it. It came with a few extra color cartridges and even has the original box, and it works pretty well. And it's really fun to play around with, especially with older Macs. Now, this does work, and I use it in a few other videos in the past, and it's a pretty cool thing. So yeah, that is the ImageWriter 2. One last thing I want to mention before I end the video is, even though I have acquired quite a few old Macs, I have also gotten rid of a few, and some have broken. For example, I sold both of my Mac Pluses on eBay because I had no use for them, and I didn't need to, and they also didn't have the accessories, and I didn't really want to keep them because accessories are very expensive. I also sold my dual drive Macintosh SE because I already have a SuperDrive SE and I had no use for the dual drive, and it also had a couple issues. Also, my iMac G4 died due to a PSU issue, and my other Powerbook 190 CS is broken because of a hinge issue. The hinge just completely snapped off of it, but it does work. It's just the whole thing is kind of broken. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I sure enjoyed making it, and if you have any questions, please leave a comment down below. And yeah, have a good day, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.